Hey folks, here are a handful of exercises I want you to perform just as a little bit of a warm-up before the routine that you're going to do at home. Okay, so first one to start off with is a reaching hinge. I want you to think of feet just a little bit outside hip width, anywhere around kind of shoulder width should do, feet nice and straight. Aim is to reach forward with the hands and then also reach back with the hips. You can see what I'm doing in a way is I'm pushing my bum nice and high, making sure that I don't just drop my hips down. So pushing back and high should mean that I get a good stretch on the hamstring as I let my chest fall and my hands reach forward. Look for a good stretch, pause at what feels like end range of motion, and then push your hips forward to get back upright. So it's not my back raising that gets me back upright, it's really my hips pushing forward. So perform a handful of reps nice and slow, as many as you feel necessary as you're going through, really control on each one, okay? On to the next one, you're going to go into a bodyweight squat. So I want feet just a little bit wider than shoulder width or hip width that you were just in. Toes pointed out a little bit as well, okay? Hands out in front as a counterbalance. You're going to go down nice and slow by pushing your bum back behind you, driving your knees out nice and wide, keeping your chest up, okay? From the bottom position, pause for a moment and then drive back up. Just take your time as you go down. Really think of squeezing all of the musculature of the legs, controlling your descent, keeping your chest up, keeping your head up, and as I said, hands out as a counterbalance. Now what I'm not doing here is I'm not just driving into the knees too quickly. I'm making sure that just like I was doing on the reaching hinge there, I'm pushing back with my hips. Then I'm driving my knees wide, making sure that they don't sort of like cave in on the way down. You can see from this position here, I'm pushing them nice and wide, making sure that I'm opening my hips as I do them. Okay, so as many reps as you feel necessary. So next movement you're going to go on to is a laying hip axial rotation. So you're going to lay down on the ground for this one, laying on your back. Legs out nice and straight. Head down on the ground ideally, but for the first 1 or 2 reps I'm just going to leave it off the ground just so I can look at what my knee's doing here, okay? So I'm bringing my knee up on top of the hip. You can see my foot in line with the knee. Essentially my knee's about 90 degrees. I'm even flexing my toes towards my shin, okay? Now from here what I imagine is the whole leg, my femur is going to rotate within the socket, within my hip capsule. So from here, keeping the body nice and stiff, I'm going to slowly rotate out to the side. And as I said, that's all coming from the hip. Where it's not coming from is my knee or my ankle, so I need to watch out for that. I need to make sure that as I squeeze, I'm squeezing everything around my hip capsule. I'm really feeling that actively work, rather than thinking that I should be pushing out with my toes. I shouldn't feel my knee move back and forth or my ankle move back and forth. So you can see from here, nice and slow, I'm both internally and then here externally rotating. I'm pushing for each position, making sure that I spend time at each end range position, so I'm not just rushing through reps. So I'm taking it nice and slow, squeezing the muscles of the leg as I do this. I've got the hang of it now, so I can leave my head down and just relax and just make sure that I push each position. Okay? From here I'm then going to switch, same again on the opposite side, flex the knee up to 90 degrees, make sure the ankle is about 90 degrees as well. And what you're not seeing is the knee isn't going back or forth. So I'll show you from this angle as well. You can see from here, my knee isn't moving left to right. My knee stays on the same position. My foot rotates out, stays sort of locked down, and it's just the femur, the head of the femur rotating in the socket. So we're going to stay on the ground for the next one. The next one is going to be a glute bridge isometric. So from here, essentially what I'm going to do is lay down on my back, bring my heels underneath my knees, my feet set about hip width apart, okay? From here, hands are out nice and wide just to kind of give me a bit of a base, and I'm going to drive up to this top position. Now from this top position, I have to assess what I'm doing. I'm going to make sure that my pelvis is kind of tilted towards my face. You can see here, if I tilt away, there's probably a bit of tension in my lower back, my stomach is relaxed, I'm not getting as much engagement from my lower body. But if I rotate everything up towards my face, feel my bum squeezing a fair bit, and I feel my hamstrings nice and active. Okay, so from here I'm just making sure that my knees drive out, I'm squeezing up to that top position, making sure my legs are really engaged, and I'm holding for about a 3 to 5 second count. Squeezing up, driving, holding, the whole time squeezing my core, squeezing my legs as tight as possible, and slowly down, okay? Go through a handful of reps. If you feel that's very easy, you can even go into a single leg variation. So from here, narrow stance, it's almost the exact same movement. I just flex one knee up to about 90 degrees. I have to make sure my hips stay level, squeezing that right bum cheek, holding for about a 3 to 5 second count, making sure that my knees don't cave in and making sure that I'm not kind of wobbling or unstable in any way, okay? So same idea again, perform a handful of reps with an isometric contraction, switching between the legs if you're going to go for that single leg variation. So next one, we're up on our feet, we're going into inchworms or walkouts. What you're doing from here is feet set about hip width apart. I'm going to push my bum back and bend over, allowing my back to actually sort of flex, but I'm still keeping my bum nice and high. From here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start walking out nice and slow, walking my hands out to what would be a press-up position, and then from this press-up position, I'm then going to tiptoe my feet towards my hands, keeping my bum up nice and high, basically giving as much of a bend in the knee, or bending my knee as much as I really need to take some tension off the hamstrings, okay? I'll then go the opposite way. I'll go hands down on the floor, walk my feet back, hold this press-up position, keep my feet where they are, and now I'm going to start walking my hands back to the feet. Okay, so just take it nice and slow, really get the most out of your hamstrings where you're not just bending down to the floor and letting your knees bend too quickly, you're actually keeping minimum necessary bend in the knee as you go through, okay? Now this can be quite tough on the upper body, so make sure you modify it as necessary. So what I'd say is instead of going really, really far with the legs, you might have to feel like you're not going to be able to support yourself with the arms, just work within a much more shorter range. So you can see from here, I'm only really going to move the feet, or I'm only going to move the hands, where I just walk forward, pause, and then I start tiptoeing forward, okay? Still gonna get benefits, still gonna get a bit of a stretch, but it'll just make it a fraction easier for you if you're finding it difficult. Next movement is called the world's greatest stretch. Now with this one, we're gonna set basically down on the floor again. So I'm gonna go into a kneeling position, and I'm gonna set my hands out in front. So this is essentially something called the quadruped position, an all fours position, okay? Now what I'm gonna do from here is, basically I'm gonna take one leg and I'm gonna bring it up to the outside of my right hand. Now that can be difficult to get into at first, so if you need to grab the leg and bring it up, that's fine. Just make sure it's around the outside of the hand. I'm going to turn a little bit so you can see this a little bit better now, okay? Now with this back leg, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my knee off the ground, and then from here, maintaining this perfect press-up position, my hips are in line with my shoulders, and I can even create a little bit of space between my knee and my armpit by kind of actively squeezing the outside of my hip, okay? From here then, I'm going to take my right hand off the ground, I'm going to drop my elbow down towards the foot, really sinking deep into the hip, and then I'm going to open up, rotating through my trunk and reach for the roof, okay? Take this nice and slow, really sink deep into the hip, try to pause for a moment, and then reach. Think of this as your stretch here, where you're getting as deep as you can into the hip socket, just to open up some space, and then rotate through again, okay? I'll show you an easier version when we switch the side here. So I'm getting back into my all fours position. I'm going to take my left foot and bring it up to the outside of the left hand. From here then, setting back with the leg. So the easier version would be just essentially keeping the knee on the ground. So if you're strong enough, if you feel fine going through, by all means, you can go for the more advanced version. But if you have to drop the knee, then you can. Drop the elbow down towards the foot, rotate through. Make sure you've created space already. You've actually pushed the knee out nice and wide. Drop down and open up. So a few options there on that one if you need it. Now, last but not least, we've got fire hydrants. So with this movement, we're going to stay on the ground. We're going to go into what will be our all fours position. I'm going to leave my hands down underneath my shoulders, my knees underneath my hips. And what I'm actually going to do from here, just to make sure I perform this correctly, is I'm going to bring my knees close together. Okay, so knees and feet in. Because I'm going to essentially go onto one leg, okay? Core nice and tight, feet, hands stay where they are. One leg or one knee is essentially going to reach out nice and wide. You're going to squeeze the outside of the hip. Just think that you're reaching almost to the wall to your left, squeezing out and holding for a quick second. That is essentially just going to switch on all of the muscles of the side of the hip, making sure that they're warm and ready to go. Now what I'm not doing here is I'm not flexing my pelvis. So my pelvis isn't moving up to the ceiling. I'm not flexing the side of my core, and my knee isn't moving up high. So you can see from here the idea being my knee should move out wide. I keep that narrow stance, I squeeze out wide. I feel a ton of activation on the outside of my hip, but my pelvis hasn't flexed up. I haven't turned and twisted in any way. So I'll stay nice and tight with my core, reach out, squeeze, try to just get those muscles kind of switched on and ready to go. Okay? So any number of reps that you feel necessary, however much you're getting from those movements, okay? So all in all, the warm-up should only take about kind of 5 to 10 minutes. Just think of it as getting your heart rate up a little bit and just getting blood to the muscles that are about to work for the routine. All right?